In this week's show, the ongoing saga of choosing a new personality to drive our country forwards. Ovation saturation. Have we got standing ovation inflation? Working from home is 13% more efficient than the office. Team burning in Switzerland. A discussion with Sharon Barton. Sharon is a commercially driven HR professional with many years of HR experience in many sectors and countries. She now runs Harbour HR Solutions. Question of the week. Are introverts less authentic? What's introversial in the news this week? A new leader. The UK is still obsessed with a small percentage of the population choosing our new Prime Minister. Over the last week or so, 5 would-be Prime Ministers have been authentic in saying what they think about the other candidates. Except, as they never used to say this before, how can they really be authentic? Is it only me who thinks it's a crazy way to choose who's going to redirect the country? But more importantly, authenticity. What is it? And is it relevant to introverts? That's a great segue to this week's question, which is, can introverts be authentic? Ovation saturation. Laura Freeman in The Spectator noted something which I often wonder about. The standing ovation, once the exception, is now the rule. She gets how, immediately after lockdown, lavish clapping made sense, but now we should be back to normal. As she says, if you stand for everything, what do you do to differentiate the amazing? And I'm with Laura. I feel like a Grinch when I stayed seated recently. Or is that my introvert self being less showy? Working from home continues to pop up in the news, with many doing it to avoid travelling to work in the UK's heatwave this week, which is now diminished a bit. The government are still very keen for us to be back in the office, with claims of better efficiency. It makes me shake my head, as I know many, introvert and extrovert, who get more done at home. Nick Bloom is a professor of economics at Stanford University in California. He's been studying the efficiency of home working since well before the pandemic struck. He says the science shows working from home makes staff more productive and happier. In 2015, he published research showing that in a study of 16,000 call centre staff, those who worked from home were 13% more efficient than their office-based colleagues. So yes, water cooler moments do help creativity and learning, but the argument for office working isn't as strong as some would have us believe, especially for many introverts who struggle in noisy, open-plan offices. Team burning. In the week, I read that a team-building exercise in Switzerland left 25 people injured after walking barefoot over hot coals. Now, I struggle with most team-building events as they turn off a sizable number of the team that they're meant to bring together, especially many introverts. There's some notes about that in the sleeve notes. But that wasn't the part of the article that made me notice. A spokeswoman for the company said, "No one was injured in a life-threatening manner, but I don't know how many are still hospitalised," which just made me think. Perhaps that's a good time to move on though, where my discussion with Sharon can set your feet to the fire. Welcome, Sharon.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me today. I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Yeah, it's brilliant to have this conversation. I know we've been talking for a while about introverts, extroverts, and everything in between. But before we get on to the relevance of introversion, extroversion, and the work that you do to help leaders get more from their team members and the support you give them as an HR professional, are you an introvert or an extrovert, and what does that mean to you?
So whenever I've completed any psychometric assessments in the past, my dominant features will fall on the introverted side of the spectrum. But those who know me well and have worked with me are often surprised and expect a higher either red or dominant feature, depending on what kind of profile you're using. And for me, that's all to do with confidence. So in the past, I was naturally shy and struggled with confidence internally, but I was driven and ambitious, which pushed me forward and made me project more of a confident persona. In my first senior leadership role, I was a 28-year-old head of HR, the only female on the executive leadership team of a global biotech company. So as well as being an introvert, I was the youngest, only female in a team of older, more experienced, dominant male personalities. I was proud of my position and I had good relationships with my colleagues, but sitting around the leadership table wasn't always a comfortable place for me as a natural introvert. So I would listen and observe, but often say as little as possible. I would be much more comfortable having a one-to-one or small group discussion with the FD or the CEO after the meeting. Well, I had a great boss back then, and in one of our conversations about development, he said to me one day, "The thing is, Sharon, when you speak, people listen." And that was such a powerful comment, and it made all the difference to me. It gave me the confidence to speak out more. And he was right. When I did, people did listen. As my confidence developed, I came to realize that being an introvert, I had a lot of the qualities that made a good leader. Typically, introverts have higher emotional intelligence. They read people well because they're listening and observing, and they're more thoughtful and considered. So often the ideas you present are well thought out. And I'm sure you know, John, Stephen Hawking once said, quiet people have the loudest minds.
I think that's really important. I'm loving the praise for the introverts.
Absolutely.
Fantastically interesting things there. As you said, speak and people listen. And to me, the important thing is that it's not how much you say, it's the quality of what you say. Do you find that many leaders think it's about quantity of talking rather than quality, which is important?
I don't know if it's whether the leader sees it as that, but I think when you're in a meeting environment and you've got loud voices and the extroverts that are more comfortable to speak up and be the first one to say their ideas or make those contributions, it just naturally flows that way, that they get more airtime. The naturally introverted will sit there, wait for their time, may miss the opportune moment to make a comment that might have been really valuable.
And of course, the other thing is introverts will typically process their thoughts internally. Oh, yeah, that's a great point. And they'll think about their response. Whereas the extrovert will process externally, out go those responses. And suddenly the meeting has gone careering off in a completely different direction. So if I think back over your experience, because I know you've had lots of experience in the NHS, I know you had experience in other large businesses, as you said. What would be the biggest things you think that leaders need to understand about getting performance from teams?
It's quite simple, actually. People perform their best when they feel comfortable. Being pushed out of your comfort zone is healthy, but it's got to be in a controlled way. And leaders need to understand their teams and the makeup of their teams and people's preferences. So they can understand diversity, if we use that term, in terms of different personality types, different preferences. Then if they can create an environment where people feel comfortable, they will naturally perform to their best. They'll flourish because they're going to feel like they're in a safe environment, and gives them that confidence to demonstrate that.
So very much then create a culture and environment. Psychological safety, of course, is the big buzzword around at the moment, but create an environment where all different types of people can perform well to their best strengths, which implies you've got to understand the strengths and then understand how to have an introvert-friendly environment.
Yes, that's right. And I think, there's a lot said. Equality, diversity and inclusion is, big on the HR agenda, quite rightly. But I don't think we really talk about different personality types and different preferences under that banner. But I think that it is important that everyone feels included to be able to maximize the benefit of a mixed team. As you say, it takes all types.
I look at it and I talk about diversity of thought, because the obvious diversity, yes, is very important. But the big benefit from it is the way those different people think. And it's exactly the same with introvert, extrovert.
And interact with each other, because it's about having safe challenge, isn't it? You can have a healthy debate or discussion and people bring different ideas. You need someone to challenge that thinking, and that for that to be okay and acceptable.
Big important thing then for any leader is to get to know their people.
Absolutely.
And how do they then go about helping their team members to contribute more?
So I think good communication is key and the basic for good leadership. So just having conversations and one-to-ones, it doesn't have to be a big exercise. Just talking to someone, how do you perform best? How can I help you as a leader to perform your best? What do you need from me? That kind of thing. So it's, I think, fairly simple conversations around leadership. You don't have to find the solutions. The people will give you the solutions if you ask. Having that environment where people feel comfortable to share and be able to help create the right environment. It's not always down to the leader to make that happen, but they can facilitate that, and they're in a powerful position, I think.
Just going to unpick what I think you said. It's not down to just the leader to create that environment, but it certainly is down to all people to contribute to it. But perhaps the leader's got to start it off. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think the power of a good leader cannot be underestimated. A good leader can bring out the best in their teams, and they can have a real impact then on business performance. But I guess what I'm saying is that leaders shouldn't see that they have to come up with all the ideas and all the solutions as to how we can make this the right environment for everybody. Involve people, ask them what they prefer, and you're the one that then can help make that happen.
I'm listening to that and thinking two things. One was kind of almost an analogy to delegation. Forget the environment for a second. If I was going to delegate a series of tasks or a role or something to somebody, I accept that we both have got to create it and they're going to do it in their way. And it's almost like what you're saying there. As I said, he's using that analogy. I'm going to delegate the environment. I'm going to set the parameters within which I want to make it. I'm going to allow it to happen and help, as you said, co-create.
Absolutely. I think if I was ever asked what kind of environment do you want to operate in, in either a leadership capacity or however, what a great opportunity to be given to be asked to help to shape that. So yeah, I think that's quite powerful.
And I love the fact that you said actually go out and ask the question itself. Don't kind of hedge around it. Just ask the question.
Yes, because also I think one of the things around this about people's preferences is it can be quick to judge or bring bias in. We think perhaps the quieter ones in the room, we can be quick to either label them or think that, certain things about their qualities perhaps, but quiet people have good ideas, as we said earlier, and they just need the right environment.
What I'd like to do is ask you for a couple of tips for people to help get the most from their teams. For
an introvert, if you were in a leadership position, I would say don't be afraid to do things your way. Pave the way for other introverts to play to their strengths. Great to see people, different leaders, doing things in their own way. And perhaps for an extroverted leader to make sure they're recognizing their talent in their teams and be inclusive. Think about different ways you can do things. So what we've already talked about, but also introverts like to write their ideas down and reflect more on them. So perhaps think about bringing different channels into meetings through messenger services, Teams or Slack or that kind of thing to incorporate different ways that people can share their ideas.
I like that. And I think that's a really, really good point. I often say it doesn't even have to be technical, but I love the idea of bringing some of the tech stuff, but sometimes it's just using bits of paper in a meeting.
Yeah.
My most hated thing, maybe I'm talking to a fellow introvert, so maybe you'll agree with me or disagree, I'm not sure. My most hated thing is that brainstorming word where I'm just expected to shout out thoughts. I'm like, no, think about them first.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, completely. It's a obvious way that people sort of start a meeting or bring into a meeting, but there's many different ways. And I think we need to just be a bit more open-minded.
So Harbour HR, how do you help businesses really, really quickly?
I work with leadership teams to help them maximize their performance, their business performance through getting the most out of their people and creating the right environments through various methods, coaching, maybe different tools, that kind of thing. So yes, I love to work with growing businesses.
And how can people get back in touch with you?
My website is harbourhr.co.uk.
Thank you, Sharon. I always know it's a good discussion when suddenly I look down and go, time's already up. So thank you so much.
Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure.
My takeaways from the discussion were: get to know your people and their preferences. As an introvert, when you speak, people listen. That's much better than speaking for the sake of it, where people start to ignore you. Drive and energy and desire may help you find tactics to appear more extroverted. but you'll still lose people energy and have the benefits of internal processing. It's not down to a leader to create an environment all on their own. What were your takeaways? Please add to a discussion on the Facebook page. Activate Your Introvert. What would you like to know about introversion in business? This week's question comes from Steve, and I apologise in advance to you and to Steve if I go into a rant on this one. Sorry, Steve, but I don't begin to understand your logic on this one, and I have actually chatted to Steve about it. Introverts are the quieter ones, therefore they don't say everything they want to, therefore they're not authentic. Let's start with authenticity. Authenticity drives me up the wall. Be an authentic leader. Be authentic team members. It's so obvious. It pops up all the time as the latest buzzword. It seems like work culture is developing along the social media and reality TV world lines, where we share incessant rubbish. Oh, it's being honest all the time. Nothing wrong with that. Is there? Self-disclosure, if it shows you're not aligned with the company or team values or culture, could hurt your reputation and damage team building. Disclosure about others. More honesty. Being honest with others or unvarnished feedback can lead to damaging feedback to other team members. Are introverts less authentic? 3 interesting points from surveys I've completed. Number 1. Introverts are often more private and extroverts are often more likely to let it all hang out there. If being more private means you're less likely to tell everything, then introverts are less authentic. However, I don't think telling everything is what authentic really is. Number 2. Introverts tend to be the quieter people in a group and may not always bother to say what they think. When they see no point in pushing into an already overloaded loud discussion, is that authentically who they are? Or would always butting in make them more authentic? Number 3. Most introverts I've surveyed value being part of a close community or team, not tribe, where they feel valued and that they can add value. When part of a close community, introverts do share information about themselves, but the concept of psychological safety comes to mind there. It's an introvert myth that introverts are less authentic. Creating a psychologically safe workplace appears to come before expecting everybody to be authentic. Where authenticity is about being able to safely not go along with toxic elements of company culture, being able to safely take risks around team members without fearing embarrassment or punishment, and being able to share elements of your life and views as appropriate and not being expected to always share your views on procedures and colleagues incessantly, then authenticity has to be good, and introversion is in no way a barrier. But it all says to me psychological safety has to come before authenticity. What question would you like answered on the show? I promise not to rant, or try not to. Go to activateyourintrovert.co.uk and complete the box. You could also follow on Facebook and discuss the answers at the show's page. Activate Your Introvert.
I'm John Baker. Thank you for listening. I hope you found it useful. There's a new episode every Thursday at activateyourintrovert.co.uk and your favourite podcast provider. Till then, go be introversial, activating your introverts, building your business.